Hey guys, it's Blahzaye, and it looks like Canada just pretty much elected a very direct F you to Trump. Let's get into it.
So is Donald Trump about to single-handedly redefine Canadian politics? Let's talk about Canadian politics for just a second here. So today, Canada is holding their parliamentary elections where they will all go out and vote for their members of parliament. And the result of this vote will obviously decide who the next Prime Minister of Canada is and who the ruling party of Canada is going to be. The ruling party in Canada for the last close to a decade has been the Liberal Party in Canada, and most of this time the Prime Minister was Justin Trudeau. Now, just recently, Justin Trudeau resigned, making Mark Carney the leader of the Liberal Party in Canada. Now, there are two big things that seem to be impacting Canadian elections.
And first, though, let's talk about Justin Trudeau. I thought he did like a decent job, right? Canada wasn't burning down. Throw it down in the comments if you have more knowledge. I know Justin Trudeau got a lot of hate. I remember him doing the blackface stuff, going crazy out there, doing all the blackface and the political parties and stuff, and just being extra liberal, extra progressive, and a lot of people just didn't like that. That's why they were using Justin Trudeau as an example to get Trump in. So throw it down in the comments what you think about that.
Elections, in which way things are going to sway. One is, of course, Donald Trump being elected president of the United States. And the other is the economy in Canada. Things in Canada economically are not exactly great right now. The cost of housing is through the roof. The cost of living is through.
And everybody keeps saying the cost of housing, but that is literally a universal thing. You can go to every other country, every other developed country in this world right now, and it's always the cost of housing. That's a major issue for the millennial generation in any part of the country right now. You can check it.
Through the roof, not dissimilar to how things are here in the US, but in some metrics even more extreme than the problems we've been experiencing here. And understandably, the Liberal Party, as the ruling party in Canada, has caught most of the grief over the economy doing poorly. Now, the other party involved in the Canadian elections, at least the other major party that's competing in the Canadian elections, is the Conservative Party of Canada, which is led by a guy by the name of Pierre Poilievre. Now, not that long ago, the Conservative Party in Canada had a huge polling advantage, like a 25-point polling advantage over the Liberal Party, due mostly, again, to the cost of living crisis in Canada. Then, however, Donald Trump was elected to the United States and started this somewhat unexplainable feud with Canada. Right around that time, Justin Trudeau resigned as the leader of the Liberal Party, and a gentleman by the name of Mark Carney was elected to the leader of the Liberal Party, making him the new Prime Minister in Canada. But Trump's election and his subsequent unexplainable feud he started with Canada changed that, and polling started to shift, mixed with the fact that Justin Trudeau, who was losing some of his popularity, was no longer the face of the Liberal Party. The fortunes of the Liberal Party in Canada started to kind of reverse, and it got to the point where, as of just recently, it's now considered that the Liberal Party in Canada is actually favored to retain power in tonight's elections, which is obviously a massive change of fortunes from not that long ago when the Conservative Party had a massive polling lead over the Liberal Party. So you do have this kind of hilarious story.
You know, funny thing, Trump had a massive influence on that as well. In the beginning, I would say the first maybe 30 to 60 days, when Trump came in, he was hammering out executive orders. Everybody was behind him. They were getting stuff done, knocking stuff out day by day by day by day. That was fueling that Republican boost in the Canadian side. All that politics, all the Republican politics, the conservative politics. But then when things started going absolutely downhill, massive plane crash. No shout out to the FAA right now. Freaking everything is just burning right now, and it looks extremely bad. And this is the thing that I want to talk about this because it's something that China knows as well, right? China knows like everything happens in all these cycles. People can see something bad, and now that negative impact from Trump in the American side has already affected the Canadian side. Everything happens in cycles. That's why China knows we can't keep up with a long-term trade war, right? They know that they can just stay on their side, not talk, not do anything, or just execute in different countries and avoid us, exclude us out of everything, and just wait. Put it down in the comments about what you think about that.
Storyline where there is at least one narrative that says that the election of Donald Trump in the United States completely destroyed the fortunes of the Conservative Party in Canada. However, I'm always somewhat cautious to accept overly simplified political narratives, and I like to dig in deeper and see if there's other things that are going on. And if you look at some of the information and the polling coming out of Canada, you do find that there is a sort of undertone of a second storyline that could end up impacting tonight's election. There was a recent poll that was released that showed Carney's Liberals with about a 3-point lead over the Conservatives. And this has been consistent with most other polling that has shown an advantage for the Liberals over the Conservatives recently. Now, in this poll, it's true that 40% of Canadians listed dealing with Trump as one of their top concerns for who they were voting for. And that's a significant number. However, in that same poll, 60% of Canadians listed affordability or the cost of living as one of their top issues in the election. And that's a topic that, in theory, favors the Conservative Party more, seeing as they have not been the party in power for the last 9 years or so. There was another interesting number in this poll where they asked people who they thought their neighbors were voting for in the election. This is a question that pollsters developed as a result of missing the Brexit vote in 2015 and the Trump win in 2016. They started asking people, regardless of who you're voting for, who do you think your friends and neighbors are voting for? The idea being that there are some times where people will tell pollsters what they think they should say, not what they're actually thinking. And when you ask people who they think everyone around them is supporting, they might answer with who they actually are supporting anyway. At any rate, when that question was asked in the same poll, it showed a bigger advantage for conservatives, meaning people were saying they were going to vote liberal, but that they thought everyone around them was voting conservative. Sometimes that number is just a number. It's just the way people perceive things, and it doesn't always predict an upset. However, if there is going to be a polling error and an upset, it's that number that is going to be the predictor. So it's going to be really interesting to see which of these two sort of parallel storylines wins out. If it's the affordability storyline, I think conservatives actually pull off the upset and become the ruling party in Canada. If it's the Trump storyline, then that gives the Liberal Party in Canada another win, and they continue their long reign of being in charge of the Canadian government. So this has been a fascinating sort of turn of events in Canadian politics, and it's going to be interesting to see how this turns out. So if you have any thoughts on this, drop them in the comments. If you're a Canadian and you have your thoughts on this election, feel free to drop it in the comments.
Well, the funny thing is when Trump's sitting there saying it's going to be a 51st state, consistently, he's been doing that this whole time, guys. That's going to be an immediate threat. Like, nothing else is going to matter at that point. Like, that is the top priority, no matter, like, they don't care about housing anymore, because if it's not going to be Canadian housing anymore. It's going to be American housing, because we're going to be a 51st state. So housing gets thrown out immediately when you start putting actual threats of being taken over in the top. So of course Trump's going to be that, and that's why, you know, the Mark Carney guy got it in the end. Let's go to these comments. Canada is going to ruin themselves to spite Trump. Hey, this is how it is. Yes, exactly. It's going to be the funniest thing ever if they do, because Trump and what he's trying to do is genuinely good, but he's having to be mean and harsh to get there. And conservatives want to sell off their water, land, and sovereignty to Trump. This is interesting because this is kind of like a split comment section, which is good. I love it to have opinions and facts from both sides, like what people are thinking. Canadians, the Liberal Party has failed us, so let's vote for them again. 10 of the last 11 recessions have happened under Republicans in America, and they still get voted in. Conservatives in Canada aren't the same as Republicans in America. I guess it's a good thing I specified that I was talking about American politics. So yeah, this is a good comparison. It's like all of the recessions are under Republicans. The majority of them are under Republicans here. But in Canada, they're saying like, oh, well, the Liberal Party continues to fail us and fail us and fail us again. He's starting to bring up like, well, in America, this is how our conservatives have run it. So maybe we need some data in regard. If you have any data about how the Liberal Party is doing in terms of recessions in Canada, throw it down in the comments below. I hope the Liberal Party wins. It'll be 100 times easier to make Canada the 51st state. If the Liberal Party wins, wasn't Trump pushing for the conservative side so that you could transition to the 51st state? Carney wasn't elected. He was placed into power. Also, mass immigration and incentive to hire cheap labor has hurt the economy. When people say this, I just think about the Nebraska video that we previously did. It's like, oh, well, now that Trump's immigration policies are going into place and all the immigrants and the illegals and people that were naturally here, natural born citizens that are working the fields are leaving. They're working the hotels are leaving. They're working the shipping docks. They're leaving. That was all the cheap labor. Now there's a crisis. Now you see those farms, you see those docks and everything start to be like, hey, we need some labor. We're about to start putting up bankruptcy. We're about to sell off part of our equity to remain floating because our labor's gone. But then you have people like this that are like, hey, mass immigration and cheap labor is hurting the economy. But then when we're seeing it in action, it's now when we remove that cheap labor, it's detrimentally hurting the businesses. So who's right? You know what I'm saying? I like how instead of running on how to fix Canada, They're all complaining about Trump. That is interesting. That is a tactic. And as I said before, it's because you guys, Trump's been like, hey, you guys want to be a 51st state. So of course that's going to be the first number one thing. It's not going to matter if anything, none of the Canadian policies are going to matter if you guys just become the 51st state. So of course that's going to be the number one priority. That's the biggest threat. It's not an unexplainable feud. Trump's asking Canada to secure your borders and have fair trade. Do you have any idea the amount of tariffs Canada has on the US? And Trump negotiated that deal in his first term. Blame him. He did do all the deals. And then Biden kept the deals. Your lumber and high dairy tariffs started in the 80s. Exactly. And Canada is going to suffer. They're just going to blame Trump for their failure. Just blaming Trump. Yeah, I know. And I don't think that's one side of politics and that's another. There's two sides of it, right? You should be focusing on improving the lives of your people. That's why you're voted in. That's why you're elected in. But then do you just ignore the threat of what Trump is saying? You're just saying like, oh, he's Trump. He's just saying stuff. You know, that's funny guy over there. Let's just ignore it. Let's try to fix this housing over here. Let's just focus on this. We'll just ignore Trump. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Or do you face that? Let me know down in the comments and below if you guys like this kind of content. Hit the like button for the algorithm because they're getting squashed. And subscribe if you want to see more content like this in the future. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.